Welcome to Bad First Impression, a podcast about movies and where we meet them. I'm your host, Devin Warner, and this is a show about how a relationship to a movie grows out of our first impression of it. From forgotten movies we grew up thinking were generational classics to movies that everyone else just didn't get. Each episode, a guest and I discuss what we and the movies bring to each other when we meet. This week, my guest is comedian Charlie Flynn, who selected Best in Show.
Yes.
So what is your relationship to Best in Show here?
Best in Show is just like, it's a movie that has basically existed in my life as long as I can remember. I was thinking before I came here, like, when was the first time I saw this movie? I have no idea. But I know it was when I was very young, and it was
like exactly how young?
Probably like 10-ish.
Oh, wow.
I would say. It was definitely like on in my house a lot.
See, I think this is a really funny movie.
Yeah.
But when I was 10, my issue is that it's not that I didn't like comedies, but the comedies had to be really kind of loud and boisterous, which this comedy is really not. There's not a lot of zany stuff that happens in it.
Yeah. I think I always kind of was more drawn to I definitely liked the loud and boisterous stuff too, but I think at least the stuff my parents could stand to watch and show us was maybe a little less zany, a little less like cartoonish.
There's nothing in it that I'm like, a kid wouldn't like this.
Right.
But I was watching it and laughing to myself a lot. And I was like, I just don't know. And again, this is just me. I don't know that I had lived enough life to find the things in this funny at the age of 10 or 12. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you say you watched it a lot. Do you know was it something one of your parents introduced you to this movie?
I think so. I honestly can't remember like who exactly like put it on for me. But I think my parents liked it and they liked that kind of thing, that kind of movie. And so it was definitely on in my house. And I think it would have I'm pretty sure we had it on DVD.
No, I've talked on previous episodes about just like how what your parents just get on DVD ends up influencing what your like foray into film actually is.
Yeah. And my family took a lot of, we would go to Massachusetts. I'm from Virginia. We would go to Massachusetts in the summer and we would always drive. So we took a lot of long road trips. So we had just
the car DVD player.
We had a car. Well, we just had we weren't even fancy enough for a car DVD player. We just had like a mini TV with a DVD player in it that was just like in a basket of laundry.
You didn't, not like the installed one in the back of the seat, like the lap one, right? Like it looks kind of like, it doesn't look quite like a laptop, but it looks kind of like, you know, like the Leapfrog learning pad where like it looks like a children's toy.
We had fully just like a TV, like a like a square, I guess like cube TV that my parents somehow figured out how to plug into the car.
That's bizarre. Like they just like jerry rigged it into like the cigarette lighter.
I think it was
something?
the cigarette thing. Yeah. Back when that was like.
That is some real
normal.
I love that sort of like analog technology where it's just like, we'll just like, if we like combine enough weird cables with like 6 points of failure along it, we can figure out a way to watch a movie in the car.
And we were so dependent on it that I remember one time we had probably gotten, it's like a 9-hour drive. We'd probably gotten 3 hours in and the TV we had broke and my parents were like, we're not doing the rest of this without like something to pacify you guys. So they stopped and got a new one.
We're going to stop and like, wait, I'm sorry. When you say they got a new one, did they buy something else to kind of attach to what they had set up?
No, they bought we stopped at Best Buy and bought like a new TV.
Oh God.
Like a new mini TV. Yeah.
That's, jeez, I love that. Yeah. I'm the oldest of 4. Okay. So I would have we had 2 in the car. They were like the little, like they weren't like, I don't mean to say this like, oh, like we had 2 DVD players. They were like the cheap little ones. Totally. And they would just sit there. My 2 sisters would just sit and like stare at it. It was the only way to keep the car like sedate enough to move through things. I want to talk a little bit about how liking this movie from an early age influenced your kind of taste in things. What did you seek out? Like, did you seek out things that were similar to this?
I think so. I think it made me attracted to stuff that's kind of like simultaneously very smart and very stupid. Yeah. Like stuff that I don't know, the kind of, like I said, I'm a comedian and a lot of like my comedy stuff is like kind of pseudo intellectual and kind of like very performancy and posturing of smartness when it's really just like saying dumb stuff. And I think that that's kind of what's going on throughout this whole movie.
big, I find kind of like, we were actually just talking about, as I'm usually talking to anybody about, right before this recording, we were just talking about 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Which is such a great example of, I mean, tonally, it's a very different, because that's like a live action cartoon, basically.
Yeah.
But it has these kind of like really intelligent, you almost need to be a East Coast liberal elite to get these jokes. And at the same time, then immediately afterwards, they'll just be like a poop joke or just like the most base stuff. And that stuff ends up gelling really well together, because I think the way that it bounces off each other
totally
makes you laugh more, because it stands in such stark contrast here.
Yeah.
Like in this movie, which is kind of like skewering this kind of like upper class subculture here at the dog show.
Yeah.
And then I checked, like when I finally heard Fred Willard's voice as the announcer, is it Tom Laughlin? I can't remember the character's name right now.
I think so. Yeah.
It's something Laughlin. Immediately I hear his voice. Fred Willard has a completely unmistakable voice. And I check the time code and I'm like, we're 48 minutes into a 90-minute movie. Mm-hmm. And literally the whole movie's like energy shifts as soon as he gets there.
Yeah.
And his whole, we'll do like a rundown of like all the major characters in this movie. And there's kind of a lot for how simply structured the movie is, right. I think. But he shows up and is just basically, he's the announcer for this dog show and has seemingly no foreknowledge or interest in dog shows.
Yeah.
Like he's asking questions of his co-hosts that are kind of like something a 4-year-old might ask you if you're there. Like, why is that dog brown? Like, it's that level stuff.
Right. Can he ever wear a Sherlock Holmes hat? And
there's a bit where there's a dog who comes out and Fred Willard, clearly like bored.
Yeah.
Is like, did they ever like, maybe he gets like a Sherlock Holmes hat and he could like put a pipe in his mouth?
God, it'd be fun.
It'd be fun. He's like, I don't think that. The other guy's just like straight laced. Like, I don't think that would ever be allowed. I don't think we could ever do that.
Well, I was thinking when that Fred Willard performance stood out to me when I was watching it this time too, just because like, I don't know, like I was saying, like the whole movie is all of these people who are kind of performing, like putting on this sense of like, we're very high class and we're elite and we're dog, but it's just like random people. And Fred Willard, for like as crazy as all of his comments are, he's somehow kind of like the straight man. Like he's the audience's like surrogate almost in a way, where he's the only one willing to kind of call it out of what the hell is going on here? Why is this all so serious?
I think the movie, the moment in the movie that kind of best exemplifies this movie, I don't think is trying to say a lot. I really just think that it's an excellent movie because it tries to make you laugh and it succeeds at that. But I think what this movie is like, if it's trying to say anything, it says it best in the moment where they're in the final round of the like it's the big climax of it. All the characters who we've seen are finally together in one round because they've won their respective categories. And the other commentator, I forget what he says, but he says something about how impressive, one of the contestants is. And he just goes, he's like, I'm just going to throw something at you. And this might be a little out of left field. How much do you think I can bench press? And he just immediately, because he's like, you can tell he's at that point. He's like, I don't even want to pretend like I care about this anymore. I'm pretty done. Like he really seems like a guy who just takes this sort of stuff. Like he's a day player, basically.
Right.
Like he's just doing a job.
But then there's one point where the other commentator, who's like the real, like really knowledgeable about dog shows, where he says something, I forget what Fred Willard says, but he says, yeah, I remember you said that last year, or you asked me that question last year.
Which is so funny that they would hire him back.
Gives you the hint that like, oh, he does this every year. And he just like talks about, like, he never learns, he never changes.
Which makes there's never any like big cathartic blow up from the other host.
Yeah.
He never really, like the closest he gets is like maybe like a deep breath and sigh, but he just kind of takes it with aplomb.
Yeah.
And what makes that so funny about that line is that you realize, oh, he just does this every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Once a year, he meets up with this guy who he has to just kind of sit there and bite his tongue.
This is their dynamic. Yeah.
And he doesn't even really seem to hate Fred Willard. He just kind of sometimes seems to be a little impatient with him.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because they're one of many kind of pairings in this movie of people who are just constantly frictioned against each other, who really don't seem to hate each other, but they don't really love each other in the traditional sense. So Best in Show, if you haven't seen it, one, you should go see it. But I feel like you can listen to this without, this is a movie I don't think spoilers really matter, frankly. No. Like if you know the end of it, I think you're going to enjoy it the exact same amount.
Yeah.
There's stuff you might be looking for, but it's not really going to change it. It follows 5 contestants in the respective different categories of a dog show. It's like toy, hunting, terrier, which I don't think of as a major category of dog, but I guess. And I don't know. I actually don't know what the other categories are.
Hound, maybe.
Hound.
I don't know.
Hound might actually be. Well, no, that's the thing is there's 2 different hunting dogs. There's a Weimaraner and there's a bloodhound. Those are both hunting dogs.
Yeah.
And they don't compete in the same category. Anyway.
Maybe it's like hunting and sporting.
Oh.
Is that it?
Weimaraners might be sporting because they're like, I think this is the differentiation between a hunting and a retrieving dog. If that makes sense. Like, because Weimaraners, they like, I used to know somebody who trained them actually. And you like, it's kind of like skeet shooting, like a type of apparatus where they like shoot the disc and then they run and catch it.
Interesting.
So that's, I think, like that's, at least I know that's a sport that people do with Weimaraners. I don't know if people do other things. I'm assuming people do other things with Weimaraners. But anyway, so there's 5 contestants that we're following. I have the list because I just can't keep that many things straight. So there's Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, who's kind of like a suburban Florida couple.
Yeah.
And they have Winky the Terrier.
God loves a terrier.
Yeah, they do. They sing. They have like, how many songs are there before like the thing? It's only 2, right?
I think there's isn't it just God Loves a Terrier?
It's God Loves a Terrier, and maybe
they sing one other.
I think did they sing something in the car?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they sing.
Can't remember what it is.
They sing songs that are just like terrier themed.
Yeah.
I don't even really know how to describe the music. You know, they're just kind of like. It's whatever genre it is. If you and I just sat here and just broke out into song,
they're little tunes, but they're clearly so rehearsed. Like they've clearly like done them so many times. When they're at their little going away party, they have all the harmonies.
They have a really interesting dynamic, which is that everywhere they go, and they live in Florida. The show takes place in Philadelphia. They stop along the way. Everywhere they go, they run into Catherine O'Hara, who it's Cookie. What's her last name?
I can't remember.
1 second. That's why I have the
Cookie.
That's why I have this pulled up here. So it's Cookie Fleck.
Cookie Fleck, yeah.
Is the character's
Jerry
name.
Fleck.
Cookie and Jerry Fleck. Everywhere they go, random men recognize her as someone who they've had a hookup with.
Yep.
And Jerry just kind of has to just like walk away indignantly every time this happens. He never really gets angry about it, which again is like, it's the same dynamic as the announcers. Actually, you find that this is just a thing that sucks that he just keeps putting up with. He just puts
up with. Yeah, and it's just like such a great joke because they lay it on thick in the beginning, but then it just like kind of seeps through in the end. It's all throughout the movie.
It's funny because she's never really ashamed of it. It never really becomes. No. I was honestly, because this movie's from 2000. This is a pretty dark time for like movie comedies. I think. In that I was talking about how the things that would hold my attention at the time would often be like really big, wild, zany comedies.
Right.
9 times out of 10, those movies include, like in broadest terms, things that haven't aged very well.
Yeah.
It was kind of enlightening to see like, well, yeah. And there's like comedy and they'll point out like really specific sex acts she does. Like multiple men identify her by her ability to get both of her ankles behind her head at once.
Or like I banged a lot of waitresses.
I banged a lot of waitresses and you're the best one I ever had.
And Fred Willard at one point goes, that handler looks familiar. That's one of my favorite moments of the movie.
I didn't catch that line, but that's really great. Yeah. Just the idea that and she's never like really shamed or made to feel bad for it. If anything, it's just around, he's like, it's not even that he like hates that about her. Yeah. It's that he's just like, it's really annoying that I'm trying to have a conversation with just any other man. And I have to have this conversation every time I'm doing it.
Yeah. He's less mad that it is her history than that all the guys feel comfortable just kind of talking about it in front of her husband.
I'm bored. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. I'm a little sick of this.
And he says to her ex-boyfriend's wife when they stop to stay there, like, what if I just said your luscious melon breasts look wonderful tonight?
And then that guy who is like, by the way, this whole movie is filled with like, it's like that guy central.
Yeah.
The ex-boyfriend who they stop at on the way there is played by Larry Miller, who is just like, he's in small roles in a million things. I feel like weirdly around the time I was growing up, he was like a dick on like Disney Channel shows a lot. Like I think he was maybe a mean principal on one of those shows because I remember seeing him a lot.
For me, my mind goes to The Princess Diaries. He He's the like hair and makeup artist in the Princess Diaries who
has like Princess Diaries.
Yeah.
I thought Princess Bride, and I was like, he's not that. No.
No, in Princess Diaries, he's the one who gives Mia a makeover.
Yeah. That actually might be weird. That might be like the Disney Association I'm making. Yeah. He is a guy who is like very forward towards Catherine O'Hara. Yeah. And that's a really weird little stop. Yeah. But the second he shows up, he hasn't even done anything aggressive or weird, but you just see the look he gives Catherine O'Hara. Yep. And you're like, okay, well, I know 1000% where this is going.
She's reassuring Eugene Levy the whole time. Like, it's nothing. It's ancient history. He's got a wife. He's got a kid now. And the second they shows up,
he like literally kisses her on the mouth and lips, like holds her still. The other contestants, I didn't know until afterwards because I'll say here, Christopher Guest is kind of a blind spot for me. Unfortunately, the only movie of his I'd seen prior to this is Mascots, which I just watched on Netflix when it was new because it was new.
That's one of the few of his I haven't seen.
I don't really strongly recommend it. It's now that I've seen Best in Show, it very clearly is trying to imitate the success of it.
Yeah.
You know, it also has Parker Posey, who we'll get to in a second, playing a really big outsized character. It has Ed Begley Jr. in a kind of administrative minor role. And it's basically Best in Show, but they're all at a competition to see who's the best like mascot character. Right. It's just honestly pretty unfunny. Like it's like if this had no successful jokes, you'd get to the end of it and you were like, there was just kind of a straight documentary of a weird competition that goes on.
When was it? 2016? Very much like a Netflix
2015 movie. Or 2016, where like Netflix was still like, well, what if we give Christopher Guest $10 million? What happens if we do that? Let's see how that comes. Then we have one in our back catalog. And that movie just kind of doesn't exist. It doesn't really have any cultural footprint. Right. But Christopher Guest, he plays Harlan Pepper, who is this kind of Southern. He's in his first like monologue that he talks. I realized about halfway through, he's not even speaking English anymore. Yeah. He's literally just like mush mouth. He's like, it's this, because Christopher Guest is English, right? Yeah. He's like a lord, I think.
I think so, yeah.
And he's just doing this like incredibly broad parody of a really deep like Southern fried accent.
Yeah.
And he's got a honestly really gorgeous bloodhound. It might be the most impressive dog in the movie.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So you've got Harlan Pepper, which is honestly a fantastic name. I love that one.
I love him. He like is one of my favorites in the movie when he's in his RV just talking to the camera and he's
like trying to get good at ventriloquism.
Yes. But also when he's talking about how I used to be able to name every kind of nut.
And then he just lists
nuts and it's so funny. And then he talks about how his mom would get so mad that he would say macadamia nut, Brazil nut.
I love when he tries to do the impression of the dog's bark and he's like, and obviously the dog is saying macadamia nut when he's doing that bark. Parker Posey and Michael Hitchcock. Michael Hitchcock is another one of those, like, if Larry Miller is like the perpetual like bald dickhead. Yeah. Michael Hitchcock is kind of like, he's always like a cuck in every single interaction he has. He's the lawyer Gilligan on Arrested Development. I think is the first thing I think of when I see him. That he's just this constant put upon, his eyes like bug out of his head every time he's talking to somebody. But they're this really sexually frustrated, kind of high-strung yuppie couple.
Yeah, kind of waspy.
Who are constantly screaming at each other the whole movie and seem to blame a lot of their sexual dysfunction on their dog.
On the dog, yeah.
Who like, it's so funny. It's extra funny to me because Weimaraners are such a peaceful kind of, it's not that they're not expressive, but they do look very calm when they're at rest. And so they're like, this dog is freaking out. And they're like, she doesn't even like look upset by the standards of like look, because like some dogs you can see on their face, the dog is like, I don't know, sure, whatever. Yeah. Get me the bee toy. There's a big freak out where they think they have lost.
They lost the busy bee.
the busy bee, where she then has to go like scream at a pet store owner.
She's awful to him.
It's one of the best like public tantrums I've seen in a movie. It's really great where he keeps giving her like toys that are kind of what she's looking for. Yeah,
he's like, I think he would react to the stripes.
The stripes on this parrot. Do you think he would like that? Or the that's not a bee.
That's not a bee. That's a fish.
That's a bear.
Yeah.
In a bee costume.
Yeah.
And then there's the striped fish too. And And okay, so let's see the next one.
Wait, we have to talk about their little interview moment where they're talking about how they met. We met at Starbucks. We were at different Starbucks across the street from each other. I think that is like one of my favorite scenes in any movie of all time. Just the two of them talking about how they met. And
I love that they have this kind of self-mythologization, because it's like, one, not only is it like mundane the way they met, but it also seems like there wasn't any real passion to it, but there's this idea that they've built up in their head that like, isn't it so sweet? We were across the street from each other. Yes. And then I would say I'm going to go over there, and then she would be at the other one the next week, or, And
it's just all like, it's all about their relationship to like brands and capitalism. And they're like, I was at Starbucks across the street from the other Starbucks. I was working on my Mac. And I wasn't really into J. Crew at the time. And she was reading the J. Crew catalog.
What is it that she says he's drinking? Because there's a great line associated with it. You were drinking a venti cappuccino?
It's something. Oh, that is a great line. They say like, I was drinking this at the time.
Yeah, you were drinking
which I was really into.
They both gave each other's drink orders and said you were drinking. She says to him, you were drinking
cappuccino.
You were drinking a venti cappuccino at the time, which I found very sexy.
Yes.
It's this. You're right that it's every single thing is tinged with what they can buy.
Yeah.
And what the other person buy. Like they go on this whole tangent about J. Crew,
and then the LL Bean catalogs. And they would spend all day getting the new LL Bean catalog. And I'd say, honey, what's new?
There's a fantastic line in there. She's like, we were so lucky to grow up with catalogs.
Literally. I think that is like the line that sticks with me.
Yeah. And then you have to call somebody and talk to them for a little bit. And she goes, or you don't. Like that's you can just like order it in the mail or something. The other contestants there's John Michael Higgins and Michael McKean as a couple who owns a Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
I gotta say, look, I don't want to attack anybody here. Shih Tzu's the least impressive dog in the movie.
Yeah.
Shih Tzu, it makes the least impression on you.
It's beautifully coiffed. It has a beautiful
It's a very manicured dog.
Yeah.
I've got no...
It's definitely two like Queenie Gay Guys dogs.
Yes.
Which I can say.
Yes. I'll say that this is like, and you tell me if you like remember anything from the time. This is a pretty like, I don't want to necessarily say like positive, because I don't want to say that something that depicts homophobia or the effects of it on gay men as like a bad depiction.
Yeah.
But this is a pretty like non-judgmental depiction of gay men for the time, in a way that like I would call a legitimate rarity.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's just like...
I also think it's fantastic.
It's like gay guys are funny, and like gay guys are like that, honestly.
And they can have the kind of... Because like what John Michael Higgins is doing, I would call... It's a broad stereotype what he's doing. He's not like avoiding the pitfalls of like, this is a quote unquote gay character.
Right.
That being said, he's kind of like likable and funny in a way, where without ever really being the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
I think that's because he keeps like he keeps like telling jokes and then being like, oh, I'm so awful. I know that's really inappropriate.
He's just making jokes that are funny, that like if a gay guy said it would be funny.
And I think the joke is that everyone else around him, it's kind of this thing we're talking about where they're like, is it okay for me to laugh at you? Like
he's way more comfortable with it than they are.
Yes.
Like when they meet Eugene Levy at the dog show, and he has on his name tag, my name is Mary. And then Eugene Levy finally calls him Mary, and he thinks it's so funny.
Sorry. I just was trying to figure out that character is named Scott.
Scott, yeah.
Okay.
Scott and Stefan.
Scott Donlin.
Yeah.
Actually.
No, the husband.
Scott and Stefan.
Yeah.
I was like, they're a lot of fun together.
They're the best.
It's funny because you see like Eugene Levy is like playing this character with these like big prosthetic buck teeth on,
and his two left feet, which
and
we didn't mention.
He literally has two left feet. Like he has like a disorder or like a deformity or something where he literally has both of them. And
Ponce de Leon Junior High.
Yes, these characters that Michael McKean and John Michael, I always get it wrong. John Michael Higgins. I know it's three names in order, and I can never remember how they fit together. They're not playing like the broadest characters in this movie, which is like kind of crazy because they're playing pretty broad characters.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Like their scenes are a little bit more kinetic.
They're very specific.
Yeah. But when the movie started and I saw, having not seen it before, and I heard the voice that John Michael Higgins was doing, I did have like about a minute of screen time where I had to be like, this movie needs to gain my trust.
Right.
For me to not sit and be like, oh no, is this going to like, is 1/5 of the movie every time these guys come on screen going to just suck ass?
Yeah.
And I'll just have to put up with it. And no, I think it's a lot of fun.
No, it's
also,
great.
I'll notice John Michael Higgins, not a guy I normally think of as like jacked, looks fantastic.
Oh, he looks great.
Movie.
And when he does his like pompadouring, like
he
walking,
does, yeah,
I love the way he walks the dog.
Yeah. He's very impressive. And then the last set is you have Jennifer Coolidge, who's kind of like, I'm trying to remember who it was who married the guy who was like
Anna Nicole Smith.
And he's kind of like an Anna Nicole Smith type, married an incredibly elderly man for his money.
Yeah.
Has a standard poodle named Rhapsody in White.
But also seems to be named Butch behind the scenes.
So I was looking into this a little bit. All the dogs, they have like names, and it's like, you know how like in like horse racing, horses have names like Run Like the Wind.
Right.
So those are Rhapsody in White is actually like the type of name that a show dog might have, but then they have what's called call names that are like for example, I just remember from looking at the list, the Weimaraner who plays Beatrice in the movie, her call name like in real life shows is Peach, even though her full name is like this like long, like lustrous thing.
Right. So that's like it's
Butch is it?
name.
Yeah. It's what?
Day-to-day name.
Yeah. It's like, which is also like, that is, I would say, maybe the closest to a kind of like mean or homophobic joke in this movie, I think, because of the character that Jane Lynch is playing, who Jennifer Coolidge, who it would be wrong to watch her like handling another living thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, well, clearly she should never be asked to be in charge of something.
Right. But she gets to do all the beautification and the creative stuff.
She does. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's their deal.
But Jane Lynch does the actual handling of it. And yeah, the joke is that like Jane Lynch's dog, who we all know what Jane Lynch looks like, is a dog that she calls Butch.
But I think I don't even think that's homophobic.
That's the thing, is that it's just kind of the closest thing to it. And that it's more
real.
Like,
that's what she would do.
Yeah. It's more just like, it's a pun. Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. But those are we haven't really talked about plot because there really isn't.
There's not much of a plot.
It's the first half of the movie is everybody getting there, getting settled into the hotel. And then the second half of the movie is the competition, which is basically done in 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Like each of those 5 dogs is in a different category. All of them move on to the final with the exception of Beatrice the Weimaraner, who, after watching her owners scream at each other nonstop for 2 movies straight, or for the entire duration of the movie, jumps on the judge and is immediately dismissed from the competition.
Yeah. And it feels like kind of the like climax of their sexual frustration, with like the couple's sexual frustration and the kind of frustration with the movie, because at the end of the movie they've gotten rid of the dog and have a new dog. Which they say like, oh, the problem was the dog. Yeah. The reason why we were fighting all the time is because Beatrice had such negative energy. They're back in the therapist's office, all of a sudden they're smiling, wearing like bright colors. And that's like an extremely Parker Posey look that she's wearing.
Yeah. I feel like,
God, I love her.
I want to do a sidebar here on Parker Posey.
Please.
She is somebody who in my head, I was like, she feels like she's just been there since birth. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
But then I was looking at her credits and there's a lot of stuff I've seen her in since that I really like her in, like Josie and the Pussycats, Party Girl. But like, I was like, oh, I didn't actually watch most of that as a kid.
Yeah.
So I was looking through her credits and I realized I come to her mostly through her TV credits.
Oh, really?
Which is very
What are her TV credits?
So she's got like voice credits on The Simpsons and Futurama from right around this, like actually like right around the time she does this movie. She is on 4 episodes of a show called Boston Legal, which is a comedy lawyer show with William Shatner and James Spader that I watched every episode of because my dad was the type who he'd be like, these are my shows. And everyone has to sit in the room and watch them with me. Totally. And I'd be like, can I go to my room and do my homework? And they're like, no, you have to watch. I remember Boston Legal being the big one. The James Woods lawyer show Shark. Desperate Housewives. My dad was obsessed with Desperate Housewives. And CSI Miami. Those are the ones I've seen, all of those episodes, many of which more than once, because if there was a rerun on, my dad would like, all right, everyone, come on. It's on CBS. We have to come watch it. And we would just watch it in syndication. I couldn't fucking tell you anything about it. I learned for the first time that she was on the show just now. Like I had no idea.
In my house, the shows were like Ugly Betty and American Idol, but we just kind of made my dad watch those, but he loved them too.
that's the thing is that it's the kind of concept of like the asshole dad where they loved. It's the same thing as like.
I should say my dad is not an asshole. I love my dad.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about I didn't mean to imply that your dad's an asshole.
He's so nice. I know he's going to listen to this.
I'm talking about the archetype of the asshole dad, like capital A, where like you ever see like videos of they're like, oh, dads who didn't want pets.
The dog.
Their favorite thing to do is pretend like they hate everything.
Yeah.
And then the second you show them something, they're like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. That's a lot of dads with dogs.
I like that ugly Betty. Yeah. I don't care. I think she's got pluck.
With my dad, it was really Gilmore Girls because we watched a lot of Gilmore Girls in my house, and he would always like act like he didn't want to watch it, but then he knew every plot point that was coming up. And
he'd be like, are you guys watching that dumb show again?
Yeah, he'd be like, is this the episode
is this what's happening?
Where she goes to Yale?
And they know it better than you do.
Yeah.
Like it was so funny. Desperate Housewives, I think, was that for my dad, where he would be like, all right, come on. Oh shit. Do you remember last week? And he was like telling my mom the recap before the recap came on the episode. My mom's like, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. No, I'll watch it with you. I don't dislike the show, but his enthusiasm really overtook it.
Right.
But I know Parker Posey from, I'm sorry, I brought up a list of some of her TV credits here. She's on that. And I realized it's quite unfortunate, the thing that I actually know her best from. I'm 30 years old right now.
Okay.
So this was incredibly popular with young men at the time. I had quite the fixation on Louis, the show by Louis C.K.
Yeah,
this is pre-cancellation.
You're safe here. It's okay.
I have not revisited the show. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen Louis.
I can imagine
because I'm an ally.
I can imagine it would be incredibly bizarre to revisit at this point. She plays this kind of like manic pixie dream girl that like shows up and tells him how to connect with his daughter and tells him that like, you don't have to think you're ugly or want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
And then she dies and he has to find purpose some other, which is how most episodes of Louis end. He meets like an impossibly beautiful woman and then he thinks he wants to be dead and then he suddenly doesn't. And that's mostly how that show
sounds like an awesome guy.
No, I haven't revisited it since cancellation. And it's like so bizarre to talk about this because you and I are saying like, even saying you used to like him is kind of verboten now.
Yeah.
But he sold out Madison Square Garden like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So like it's funny that like that culture has just totally split on him and that there are just the people who are like, whatever, I'll pay for it. I don't care. I miss having this guy. And for me, I was like, personally, like the stuff he ended up getting, quote unquote canceled for, that word doesn't even have any meaning.
Right.
But whatever he ended up having to do a career shift over, I was like, all your jokes were about saying that men who do that are monsters. And it was just like self-loathing manifesting.
Calls coming from inside the house.
Yes, exactly. But it's so weird to be like, Parker Posey feels foundational to me, but I didn't as a child really engage with any of her major works.
Parker Posey was huge to me, because of this movie, of course. And then have you ever seen You've Got Mail?
I have seen You Got Mail.
She's in You've Got Mail. She's Tom Hanks'
that's right.
girlfriend who he doesn't end up with, who's just kind of like, again, kind of like a corporate monster.
I like that movie a lot. And she's great at playing corporate monsters. Actually. Have you seen Josie and the Pussycats?
I haven't.
You should, if you like Parker Posey, you should definitely like add that.
I feel like that was probably on in my house growing up, but I was too young.
She can play kind of corporate. I feel like in that movie, this is an issue with like rom-coms in that they don't really treat that character with any degree of like complexity, really.
Yeah.
Because as a story function, which is what she is, she's not really a character.
But she ends up with Greg Kinnear.
That's true. That's a cute moment where she's just kind of this like shrill like monster.
Yeah.
Like all she is a problem for Tom Hanks. And then the scene where she gets Greg Kinnear is like a kind of like, it almost feels like the movie telling me like, we don't want you to like hate her or women like her.
Everyone can be happy.
Everyone
it's all
can
good.
Be happy. We'll just I do always love a rom-com that's just
reshuffle.
Like, let's just reshuffle.
Yeah.
Everybody's just with the wrong guy and we'll figure that out.
I love in that movie when they're stuck in the elevator and they're all like, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to like find my true love or this or that. And she goes, if I ever get out of here, I'm getting my nose done.
Yeah.
And that's her big thing. She's out of Tic Tacs.
That's kind of that scene. Now that you say it, kind of reminds me. Have you ever seen Sweet Charity?
Mm-mm.
There's an intermission in it, but like right at the middle of it is like a scene where Shirley MacLaine and the man who ends up being the love interest for most of the rest of the movie is they're stuck in an elevator together where they're just like, oh, I'm going to do this with my life. I'm going to finally fix it once I get out of here. But no, the other thing I wanted to bring up in relation to like the way this movie has influenced things, when I watched and I need to find the other guy who was the other, is it Jim Piddick as the other announcer, the kind of English posh, very proper guy. That really reminded me of the dynamic in Dodgeball just a couple of years later with Jason Bateman and Gary Cole.
I can't say I've seen that movie since it came out. So if I even saw it when it came out.
The joke is that there's a like specialty ESPN channel for like obscure sports like that. Where it's called ESPN 8 the Ocho, and Gary Cole is like the really kind of like straight laced. He has like a very like anchor, like news anchor voice. And Jason Bateman is like, he's like wearing a visor like sideways and upside down with like frosted tips. And he's just kind of like talking like a 2000s era doofus. It's a lot of fun. And I feel like it's like directly pulled from this movie.
Totally. I could see that.
But yeah, there's no real plot to speak of. We actually haven't talked about the winner or anything that happened as a result of the events of this movie.
Yeah, because that's not really the point.
No, it's not. I mean, you get to the end and it's actually really funny how you get there and there's no, I realized I'm like, I like most of these characters. Or I have sympathies with at least all of them at some point. They all have a dog on their side, which makes me at the very least feel like I have that much going for you. I don't want any dogs to feel like losers. But that Eugene Levy ends up having to go out because Catherine O'Hara gets her foot injured. He wins, and then that's kind of it. I realized earlier, actually, you expect there to be a big Parker Posey blow up. Like when when Michael Hitchcock goes out there with the dog and immediately disqualifies them because the dog is like freaked out and high strung. You don't see them again until the 6 months later.
No,
they just disappear because there's no like, she doesn't run out on stage. You don't see them screaming at each other like right outside the competition hall. But everybody is kind of like landed in weird places. We previously discussed, they got a new dog and claimed that Beatrice was the reason for all their sexual dysfunction. There's Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara have started recording
an album.
An album of their songs.
And that's a great little kicker.
It's the final one where he's like, I can't go anywhere without someone saying they fucked my wife
guy
before.
Who's running the recording studio.
He's just like again,
stops
this
them
will never
mid-recording.
And it really feels like a movie about how like these things that you'll build up so much importance in your life, and then you'll get to the end of it and you realize, oh, you're just in the same cycle. You can put all the importance in the world you want on, you can even win it too.
Totally.
And then you're going to get out of it and kind of be feeling the exact same way. Jennifer Coolidge has left her benefactor who maybe died. I don't know, just straight up not addressed. And they start a magazine to support the how exactly they put it, the lesbian
dog owner,
lesbian like show dog owner, and they're like, we're on our third issue, American Bitch. Great joke.
Great joke.
This movie, by the way, does really love it's a gimme that a female dog is called a bitch. And this movie is like, let's get every penny worth of the joke.
How could you not?
You want it to, right? You would be like really disappointed, be like, I feel like bitch was on the table right there. You know, they could have gone for bitch a little bit more.
And the dog, God loves a terrier. It's like, be a dog or be a bitch is one of the lines.
That one's so great because they just throw it out casually. And because you realize, to them, they've normalized it so much to the point that it's not a curse word and it's not a joke to them at all. They just like call things bitches all the time. Like it's a clinical term. I'm trying to remember what else happens to everybody else. Harlan Pepper goes and stays on a kibbutz in Israel. Where he does like hard labor and then comes back and decides my aim in life is to be a ventriloquist. He's just doing something else silly. But it's actually kind of nice that he accepts it with this weird zen that he didn't really do anything. He's kind of the person who passes through the movie like the least upset by the events. If that makes sense.
And he's kind of, you can tell he's just kind of like looking for himself. Like he's trying to just find something.
Well, it's adding a little bit of soulfulness to like a stereotype of a character, basically, that you hear the actual nonsense mumblings that he's using to represent the way the character interacts with people.
Right.
And then he's like, I lost this thing that I thought was important to me. So I just really decided I'm going to buckle down and figure out what is the most important thing in the world to me.
And not to get too like faux intellectual, but I was an American studies major in college. So I think a lot about like American stories and this and that. And I think one thing that's like running under the surface of this whole movie that I think Harlan Pepper really represents is that all of these people, as I said earlier, they're all kind of like performing this sense of like kind of high classness and kind of real esteem at the dog show, even though they're all just kind of random people. But they also all kind of see this as their moment for their American 15 minutes of fame. Like this is how they can finally get some notoriety. They can be the person, like everyone wishing Winky good luck is like, I can't believe you're going up to Philadelphia, the big city. And Harlan Pepper clearly wants to be some sort of star or some sort of performer. And
I think it's an interesting way to look at how people who are from places where famous people don't typically live. So in the United States, that basically means everywhere outside of New York and LA.
Yeah.
I'm from Indiana.
Right.
There is this kind of attitude that like all celebrity needs to have reverence towards it among people who don't really encounter it as a part of like even semi-regular part of their life.
Yeah.
And the idea that it's like, oh, this like little dog going to this show that 99% of people just are not even aware of exists. Right. Other people in Philadelphia will be like, I didn't know that was happening today.
Right. The Mayflower.
And this kind of like you ascribe meaning to it. Like if I can just get declared the winner of this thing.
Exactly.
If I can just do that, then it will mean something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why Harlan is my favorite take, where he's like, I realize like it doesn't have to mean anything.
Yeah.
And then what he moves on to is equally stupid and niche. It's not like he has like decided to do even anything particularly helpful to society.
And he's not good at it.
No, he's terrible.
Yeah.
And like what's funny is that he was actually like a pretty good dog handler. Yeah. Like he won his round. His dog is like a very like impressive specimen. He gets along. He seems happy doing it too.
And the commentator says like, because I think his dog is 2 years old. He's like, this could be a great show dog in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if he's stuck at it.
The guy who takes it seriously. Yeah. So it's funny, but like he seems maybe a little like frustrated with his own lack of skill, but like happy doing what he's doing at the end of the movie. Yeah. Harlan is kind of like stealthily my favorite like little thread that runs through this movie.
He's kind of the heart of it. And I think he's the best example of like, all of these people are just kind of stupid, but they all are like people. Like all the characters feel like real, like obviously heightened versions of people, but they feel like people who have like real lives and real values and real kind of beliefs, even if they're not what we all agree with.
And I think where we're talking about like what would make this, because I don't want to say that like Show Dog is like a huge waste of everybody's time. I don't think that's the case. But it's like for him, if it's important to you, if you want to prove to yourself that you can be really good at this thing, then nothing is a wasted endeavor.
Right.
As long as it's not hurting others, you know, if it feels like something that you would be proud of, then go ahead and do it. But I think the issue with all these people, all the characters in the movie, is that they're trying to seek some sort of external validation to prove to themselves that they're not worthless.
Yeah.
You know, there's some like economic anxiety with the Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara characters, where they can't even like pay for their hotel room. So
that's
they have
the good card.
That's the good card. So they have to live, or they have to stay in a storage closet next to the kitchen.
Yeah. Where the hotel manager is such an angel.
I love Ed Begley Jr. I'm always happy to see him.
Yeah. They're talking about how he's like hot, Irish, tall. I was like, yeah, I feel that way as well.
Yeah. He's 6'4" is what he says. I am really glad I have this. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with other Christopher Guest movies.
Yeah. Well, what's great about them all is that they all kind of just are this same troupe of actors. Like Waiting for Guffman is almost all the same exact people. And it's just always these little...
And he just has his people he likes working with. And,
and they just find these little like prisms of like kind of niche subcultures.
This really does feel like he was like, what's going on with Show Dogs?
Yeah.
And he like learned as much as he needed to get like all the context and the setup.
Right.
And if I like watch the credits and they have a lot of professional dog handlers on set. They made sure ASPCA was there, that like no animals were harmed or being asked to do too much work. So like they put the work in to make sure this was done the right way.
And I read that they wanted to just try to shoot this at a pre-existing dog show, but they couldn't get the ability to do that. So they had to fully mount this whole dog show by themselves. I do feel
like a dog show would maybe not have the sense of humor. They'd be like, I don't like
totally
whatever you think you're doing. I'm really not interested.
Yeah. We take ourselves much more seriously than that.
Yeah. But that being said, like all good, is mockumentary parody? I'm not 100% sure like how to classify like what type of comedy this is. I guess kind of a satire a little bit. It doesn't like hate the world and the characters it's talking with. Like any good satire can't, I think.
No, I think it's like
it's a loving homage.
It loves them and is very generous to them.
It is the big difference between this and something like this reminds me, this is a similar love for the world that it is kind of lampooning to like something like Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you compare it to something like Scary Movie. And that's just let's just point at this and call this stupid. That's like a very like Razzies attitude towards, let's find the easiest target and say, look, it's dumb.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested in kind of like doing a little bit of a deep dive. We did an episode on, I think it comes out before this one. We did an episode on Terrence Malick's first movie, Badlands. And I was like, oh shit, this is like a great little dip my toes in. So I feel the same way about this, honestly. I'm very excited to do more Christopher Guest, because also like I threw this on this morning. This is just such an easy movie to like, you can like glide right into it.
Yep.
And I feel like in any mood I would have been up for this.
Waiting for Guffman is really great. And it's only an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. I checked. It's on the king of streaming services, Tubi.
I watched it on Tubi last night.
Tubi. I think it's come up here before. I actually I had a TV installed recently, and the Best Buy guy, he's like, this is a Sony TV. Do you know about like the free channels? And I'm thinking like, oh, is there like a subscriber thing, like something that comes with the warranty or something? And no, he just goes to the App Store and starts downloading Tubi. And I'm like, my man, I already know about Tubi.
We all know about Tubi.
I'm happy that you're also a Tubi head, but don't worry, man. You don't have to do any educating here.
I had a very dark era recently where one of my friends let me know that it's not Tubi, but Pluto TV has a bunch of like nonstop channels that are just like individual shows, just streaming random episodes. So I got really locked into the Pluto TV Ink Master channel. And for about 2 months of my life, I lost myself to Ink Master and watched just about every episode of that show.
Oh, man. My problem with Pluto, I was watching the early Michael Mann movie, The Keep. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's not really his forte. He made this kind of weird, like horror-esque movie.
Okay.
It's an interesting movie, but every 20 minutes of that movie, by the way, that movie clocks in, I think, just under 90 minutes. It's not long. Every 20 minutes, there's like a 3-minute commercial break on Pluto. Tubi is like 15 seconds at the beginning.
Yeah, Tubi's not bad.
Maybe 1 or 2 in the middle.
And Tubi has a great selection.
Tubi is like, you can find a lot of just like trash.
Yeah.
Like if you want like horror sequels that you didn't know existed, it's the best place in the world for that sort of thing. You want to watch Miami Vice without paying for it? It's all there.
And I'm very curious about Tubi originals. I haven't watched any of those, but I've seen a lot of memes about Tubi originals.
I've never watched one, but I feel like I owe them a shot, right? You know, because Tubi has given me so much else. But I haven't really tried any of their originals yet.
That's not what Tubi can do for you. What you can do for Tubi.
What I can do for Tubi, and what I think everyone here should do for Tubi is your homework is go watch any Tubi original. I don't know what any of them are. We'll look them up and maybe we'll cover one at some point.
Yeah.
On that note, the last discussion topic that I like to bring up is, I'm sorry, I just actually recently changed my script. I just got to the point where I kind of had my script. If you watch the last couple episodes, you can see I'm no longer looking at my laptop for my script, and I just rewrote it.
New beginnings.
But I like to end the show by asking the guests what movie they would want to defend against what they consider to be an undeserved bad reputation if they came back.
That's a really good question. An undeserved bad reputation. Can I look at my phone for a second?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah. No, I mean,
because I'm on Letterboxd.
Yeah. No, I kind of like recently changed this because I feel like similar to how, like, I like talking about this in the lens of like, I'm not saying this would be inappropriate for kids, but I don't know a lot of people who are like, I loved Best in Show when I was 10 years old.
Actually, I told my mom I was doing this and she was like, you can't tell them we let you watch that. So yeah,
there are some things in there that like my mom might have covered my eyes while I was watching it, you know, but there's nothing in here that's like really firmly inappropriate for children.
Yeah. And anything that is, it's like, most kids can't even pick up on it.
No, I think that it's the sort of thing that would just kind of go over your head and you might pretend to laugh if you heard your parents laugh to like fit in a little bit. But similar is like, I think that there's a lot of weird passion for something that you can get really defensive of because for you, that was this special thing. And yes, maybe it's not a universal experience.
Right.
But I feel like that's the same type of passion where when you walk out of something and everyone else is like, that sucked. And you're like, I think it low-key is amazing. Like something that happened with that recently is, did you see Babylon?
I literally was about to say I'm Babylon Hive. So
huge Babylon.
I love Babylon.
Fucking love Babylon.
I think that's a great
feel like
one.
that one's like, with Babylon, it's less people who hate it and people who love it. And it's more people who are like, this is the savior of cinema. You ingrates. And what is that movie? I don't know. Like there's no opposition. There's people who just 95% of America didn't see it.
Yeah. No, I love Babylon. I saw it in theaters twice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Babylon's great. Babylon's great. I don't know if this is a great answer, but I was just looking through my Letterboxd. I love James Bond. I've been on a bit of a James Bond kick recently. And I just kind of watch them randomly. And I do really like Quantum of Solace, which I think everyone's...
That's the second one,
That's the second in the Daniel Craig.
Second Craig one. And people don't like that one?
People don't like it because it's like very, it's not very Bondy. It's very short. It's kind of just like, it starts right after Casino Royale ends. So it's kind of like a continuation of the story.
Okay. But people love Casino Royale.
Yeah. But this is just like, because they kill Vesper, who's like the one, his love interest, the one who he's like going to leave it all for at the end of Casino Royale.
I know the character because I started reading Casino Royale, the Fleming novel. Yeah. I'm normally like, I read lots of like pulp and crime novels. I'm used to reading, like I said, things that don't age particularly well.
Yeah.
That book is aggressive. The whole book is like Vesper walks out of a room and just James Bond to himself is like, what a bitch. Like, it's just like that whole time. And I'm like, I can't fucking read this, man.
I recently, one of my Midnight Cowboy is one of my favorite movies. And I randomly decided to order the book of Midnight Cowboy on like thriftbooks.com.
I recently also made a thriftbooks.com purchase.
It's kind of the best website alive.
Yeah.
If you consider websites
I found an out of print hard case crime book there.
Wow.
I found, the writer Mark Frost, co-creator of Twin Peaks.
Sure.
His first novel is kind of like an American conspiracy theory thriller. Yeah. So I was like, out of print.
Totally.
Thrift books got you.
Should I be watching Twin Peaks? I know you love it. I've never seen it.
I love Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
We can talk about Twin Peaks after this.
Okay.
I actually just recently restarted a rewatch of it. But Quantum of Solace, the Craigs, I've seen them all only once. So I would
great.
like be happy to have an excuse to go back and watch all of them again.
Please.
I think I haven't seen Quantum of Solace.
Quantum of Solace is just like,
and I haven't seen Spectre, which I know people also don't really like.
Yeah. I mean, Skyfall's definitely the best.
Skyfall
of all
rules.
of them.
And I kind of like No Time to Die a lot. Like, I don't love it. I just kind of really like it.
I haven't revisited it since I saw it in theaters, and I probably should.
Yeah. I remember having a good time with it, but I also knew people were like, I walked out of it.
Yeah.
It's 3 hours long. I don't fucking, But I enjoyed it. And like, I was at that time not, who's the villain? The guy from Mr. Robot. I can't remember.
Rami Malek.
Rami Malek. I remember being pretty down on him post his win for Bohemian Rhapsody.
Right.
And he kind of won me over the course. I kind of really love him in that movie.
You couldn't make me hate him.
Yeah. But that is all the time we have. Do you have anything to plug?
I have a comedy show at the end of the month called Invisible Architecture.
Yeah.
That's at a bar called Night Horse on Friday.
Is that monthly?
It's monthly-ish, yeah.
Okay.
It's on Friday, April 26th.
Okay.
There's more info on my Instagram.
Absolutely. So keep a lookout for that. What's your Instagram again?
Charlie Flynn with 4 N's.
4 N's. Got it. Okay. With that being said, I'd like to thank Lily Steinberg for helping to produce the show and for managing social media. I would like to thank Kristen Eng for creating the logo artwork for the show. With all that being said, this has been Bad First Impression. You can follow the show on all socials at BFI Pod. We're We're on TikTok, Instagram. I'm trying to keep the Letterboxd more up to date. It's frankly, that one's a huge pain in the ass because you can't have 2 accounts logged into your phone at once, unlike all the other socials. So I have to like open the other one in a browser basically and keep myself logged in there.
Just get a second phone.
Yeah, I'll just get a second phone for BFI. But yeah, just to kind of keep both those things going, please help the show by rating, reviewing, subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever platform you use. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little bell up in the corner so you get notifications whenever we post more things. We're getting a little more active on YouTube Shorts, so expect to see more activity on the channel in general. If you have any questions, suggestions, comments, hopes, dreams, fears, please reach out to us by DMing us on any of our social medias, commenting on stuff, or just go ahead and mail us at mailbag@bfipod.com. And as always, I've been your host, Devin Warner. You can find me on social media at WhatIfDevin. And until next time, we usually like to go out on a quote here. I don't know if we're going to have, is there like a favorite that you're like, fuck, we got to go out on that?
Can you hand me the pepperoni stick? I just want to hold it in my hand.
Yeah. Okay. So until next time, hand me the pepperoni stick. We just want to hold it in my hand.
Or God Loves a Terrier.
God Loves a Terrier. God, this is the most quotable movie I think I've ever heard. It was like, now I'm forgetting all the quotes right now as I'm saying. It was, and I know this might be a little off the beaten path, but do you want to guess how much I can bench press? Bye, y'all.